As tensions continue to rise between China and the Philippines over disputed waters in the South China Sea, Manila has come up with a bold and unconventional plan. And here's the twist. It leverages China's biggest vulnerability, Taiwan, to strengthen its territorial defense. The Philippines Defense Secretary has ordered a military buildup on the country's northernmost frontier, the Batanes Islands. This small chain of islands is not just another outpost, it's a game changer. Why? Because the Batanes Islands are located a mere 125 miles, or about 200 kilometers, from Taiwan, the self-governed island that Beijing considers a breakaway province. And China's obsession with bringing Taiwan under its control makes this strategic move by the Philippines even more compelling. On a recent visit to naval installations in Batanes, Filipino officials emphasized the importance of fortifying this region. The plan includes the construction of new infrastructure funded by none other than the United States. These upgrades will include ports capable of hosting large vessels and facilities designed for crisis management, whether for humanitarian missions or disaster relief. But here's where things get even more intriguing. This decision comes on the heels of heated clashes between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea. For months, both sides have been locked in a war of words and confrontations at sea. Now, Manila is signaling that it's done playing defense. By boosting its military presence and expanding infrastructure in Batanes, the Philippines is sending a clear message to Beijing. The northernmost tip of the country is a linchpin of its territorial strategy, and despite China's warnings, Manila is doubling down on its resolve to protect what it sees as its rightful territory. With the Batanes Islands situated at such a critical juncture, so close to Taiwan, and in the crosshairs of one of the world's most complex geopolitical conflicts, this move marks a bold step in the Philippines' efforts to enhance its military capabilities and stand firm against a much larger adversary. The Philippine Defense Department isn't mincing words. Batanes is Philippine territory, plain and simple. And their message to China: stay out of our business. Yet China doesn't seem to take the hint. Last year, Beijing openly criticized the Philippines for allowing US forces to rotate and store military equipment in 3 bases near Taiwan. This move, made under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, clearly hit a nerve. The tension between these two nations is nothing new. Their long-standing territorial disputes have fueled numerous standoffs, particularly between their Coast Guard vessels. But one looming fear overshadows it all: a potential Chinese invasion of the Second Thomas Shoal. The shoal is a flashpoint, with Chinese vessels consistently trying to block Filipino supply missions to the Sierra Madre, an old warship intentionally grounded years ago to serve as a makeshift outpost. The crew aboard this rusting vessel symbolizes Filipino resilience, but the constant interference from China underscores the growing pressure in the region. Yet the Philippines' situation stands out among Southeast Asian nations. Unlike its neighbors, it's a full-fledged US treaty ally, and its role in the growing deterrence strategy against China is becoming increasingly critical. That's why President Marcos Jr.'s recent actions have been surprising, to say the least. After his visit to Beijing, many expected him to push for warmer relations with China. Instead, he doubled down on strengthening defense ties with the United States. This shift in strategy, particularly his expansion of the EDCA, wasn't just unexpected, it was bold. What's even more intriguing is the new focus of these defense agreements. Instead of gearing operations toward the contested South China Sea, where Manila and Beijing frequently clash, the spotlight is now on the northern Philippines, closer to Taiwan. The newly designated EDCA bases are strategically positioned in provinces like Cagayan and Isabela, far from the South China Sea. And it doesn't stop there. Joint US-Philippines military exercises are also shifting northward, emphasizing these areas more than ever. Philippine officials, however, insist this cooperation with the Pentagon isn't solely about military concerns. They argue it's just as much about boosting economic and civilian opportunities. The port in Batanes, for example, is intended to improve connectivity between the province, known for its isolation, harsh seas, and frequent monsoons, and the rest of the Philippines. Philippines. In other northern provinces, officials emphasize that U.S. support or rotational presence will primarily focus on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. However, such facilities could have dual purposes. For instance, EDCA facilities designed for storing disaster relief equipment like cargo planes could also accommodate fighter jets and offensive weapon systems. Beijing is likely to interpret any U.S. effort to develop ports or facilities, whether explicitly military or seemingly civilian, as a hostile move. These could support potential U.S. interventions in the event of a Chinese attack on Taiwan. China particularly fears the U.S. is constructing a chain of dual-use facilities around Taiwan to better respond to any crisis involving the self-governing island, which Beijing sees as a breakaway province that must eventually reunite with the mainland. The administration of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has been ambiguous about its stance on the Taiwan issue. While visiting Washington last year, Marcos Jr. avoided committing the Philippines to a broader deterrence strategy concerning Taiwan. This contrasts with statements from Philippine military officials who acknowledged the possibility of joint operations in a crisis. Marcos Jr., however, has reiterated that the Philippines' defense strategy is defensive and not directed at any specific country. Nonetheless, recent developments in Philippine-U.S. defense collaboration suggest the country is gearing up for potential conflicts, either within its exclusive economic zone or in nearby waters. Starting in 2024, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, will adopt a more active operational tempo during a visit to the northernmost military facility in Batanes. The Philippine defense chief, accompanied by top military officials, underscored the nation's commitment to territorial defense and national security. President Marcos Jr. has pledged proportionate and reasonable countermeasures against illegal, coercive, and aggressive actions by China's Coast Guard and maritime militia in the South China Sea. This comes after repeated confrontations in the disputed West Philippine Sea, which have resulted in damage to Philippine vessels and injuries to personnel. While specific countermeasures remain unspecified, they could escalate tensions and risk triggering military confrontations in the region. In response to deteriorating relations with China, Marcos Jr. has sought closer defense ties with the U.S., increasing access to Philippine military bases and expanding joint exercises to include sea and air patrols over the South China Sea. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reaffirmed Washington's commitment to the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty, which obliges both nations to defend one another in the event of an attack. This includes armed attacks on Coast Guard, civilian or military vessels in the South China Sea, further solidifying the alliance amid rising tensions. The escalating disputes in the South China Sea are reshaping the dynamics of Southeast Asia, with overlapping claims on islands and maritime territories sparking tensions among nations in the region. At the heart of it all is the intensifying friction between mainland China and Taiwan, as Beijing pushes forward with its One China policy, aiming to assert control over the island. The growing military activity in the Taiwan Strait and the relentless expansion of China's military operations in the South China Sea paint a troubling picture of instability, not just for individual nations, but for the peace and balance of all Southeast Asia. Among ASEAN member states, opinions on how to address the South China Sea crisis remain divided, making it nearly impossible for the group to present a united front. The Philippines, however, has felt the brunt of China's aggressive actions firsthand, as its sovereignty has been directly challenged by Beijing's military expansion in the region. Like many nations in Southeast Asia, the Philippines lacks the economic and military might to stand against this alone, underscoring the urgent need for support from the international community. Enter the United States, a steadfast ally of the Philippines for over 70 years. Since the signing of their Mutual Defense Treaty in 1951, the U.S. and the Philippines have worked together to maintain a free and open order across Southeast Asia and the broader Indo-Pacific. This treaty, which serves as the backbone of their security partnership, has evolved alongside the region's changing geopolitical landscape, Fast forward to today, and the alliance has expanded into more modern frameworks, such as the 1998 Visiting Forces Agreement, VFA, and the 2014 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA. The VFA ensures legal protections for U.S. military personnel operating in the Philippines, while EDCA allows U.S. forces to use agreed-upon locations on a rotational basis. These agreements facilitate joint military training, security cooperation, and disaster relief efforts, further cementing the two nations' commitment to regional peace and stability. The story of the U.S.-Philippines partnership is one of resilience and adaptation, proving its relevance in an ever-changing world. As tensions rise in the South China Sea and the Taiwan Strait, this alliance serves as a beacon of hope for a region striving to maintain its sovereignty and stability amid an increasingly uncertain future.